Well, turning now to the so-called grooming gang scandal that's rocking Britain. Billionaire Elon Musk and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer are embroiled in a war of words over Starmer's alleged role in covering up the abuse. Here is Dale Hurd with that investigation.
Musk says Prime Minister Starmer should resign for being, quote, complicit in the rape of Britain, for failing to sufficiently investigate the grooming gangs as prosecutor or to launch a full inquiry as Prime Minister. Starmer has accused Musk of lies and misinformation. CBN News was among the first news organizations in the United States to expose Britain's grooming gang scandal. Here is our story from 2016, and we need to advise that this report contains disturbing content and should not be viewed by children. Some scandals are so massive that they're simply hard to believe, but this one is true. As many as 1 million white English children may have been the victims of Muslim rape gangs, better known as grooming gangs, in towns up and down Great Britain. Policy analyst George Igler.
I mean, when you counter an issue that is just so unbelievable, just so outside your frame of reference and understanding, the immediate human reaction is just not want to believe it at all.
Perhaps even harder to believe is that while there have been prosecutions, British authorities have still not stopped this criminal activity. There's a particular problem involving Pakistani heritage men who target young, vulnerable white English girls. Not my words, but a member of Parliament, Jack Straw, who also said these Pakistani heritage men view white English girls as, quote, easy meat. This is when some shout racism, but here are the facts. Calculations based on convictions show that a British Muslim male is 170 times more likely to be part of a sex grooming gang than a non-Muslim. And there are no recorded instances of non-Muslims doing this to Muslim girls as part of a criminal enterprise. In one local jurisdiction, it was estimated that 6 out of 7 Muslim males either knew about or were part of a grooming gang.
What you do not have is any example of non-Muslim men targeting Muslim girls for this organized form of abuse. So the argument that this crime exists everywhere is not only false, but is being deliberately cultivated by the media and by the government inquiry that is kicking the can down the road.
The grooming gangs have been traced back as far as the late 1980s. At-risk white English girls, often from broken homes and some as young as 9 years old, were wooed or groomed by teenage Muslim boys called Romeos, and even by groups of Muslim men who hung around school gates. The plan was to make the girl feel important. She was given gifts and drugs, but she was being groomed to be a drug-addicted prostitute. Then came the gang rapes. The girls were threatened with death if they tried to flee. The definitive book on this scandal is Easy Meat by Peter McLaughlin, who declined an on-camera interview for safety reasons. He told us journalists would not speak about it because the perpetrators were mostly dark-skinned and Muslim. Childcare professionals used political correctness as an omerta, a code of silence concerning what the public was allowed to know.
These girls are the victims of a multicultural revolution, and it's certainly an indication of the fact that this accusation of racism is potentially the most powerful political weapon known to man.
The cover-up was eventually exposed, yet the grooming gangs continue to operate. One victim told a British newspaper, "Nothing has changed, not in the slightest. It's still the same scale as before." Prime Minister Starmer claims that when he led the Crown Prosecution Service, it had the highest number of child sex abuse prosecutions on record. However, the grooming gangs were never effectively stopped, and the abuse continues to this day. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Disturbing but important report. Gordon?
It's a very disturbing report, and we broke that story back in 2016. Here we are 8 years later, and still it's going on. And it's amazing to me that the people of the UK aren't able to identify it for what it is. And within the Islamic community, if you're an infidel and if you're a woman, well, then you're an easy target. There's no prohibition for what is going to happen to you. We saw that in the Yazidi population as ISIS took over northern Iraq. We saw what happened to those. It was horrible, the crimes that were committed against those women. And to see that now spreading throughout Europe and no one raising a hand, well, there's a fundamental problem here. There's an ideology that says if you're an infidel, I get to do whatever I want to you, and there's no consequence under my religion. That needs to be pointed out. And whether it's the rapes that are happening in Sweden, what's going on in Germany, we're now seeing mass protests against Christian markets, the institution of Sharia law. And you just shake your head, and what in the world are they thinking? And why aren't they standing up to it saying, no, if you're an immigrant into our culture, number one, you have to obey our laws. That needs to be fundamental. You can't cross these lines and say, well, you obey some kind of higher law, and it gives you permission to do this. This needs to be stopped. It needs to be pointed out. And no one should be afraid of any kind of charge of racism, because it's not racist. It's based on what they think, and what they think is clearly wrong. We need to have the complete freedom to call it for what it is. It's rape. Do not allow this within your culture, and don't let your children be called easy meat by any